In the desolate, wind-swept highlands of Scotland, a secret lies buried. A structure of impossible geometry, a monument to a madness beyond human comprehension. They call it the Chronos Labyrinth. A place where time bends. Where reality unravels. Where the very fabric of existence is stretched thin, threatening to tear. Tonight, we invite you to step into the darkness. To journey into the heart of an ancient horror. To witness the unraveling of a mind, and the terrifying truth of what lies beyond the veil. Prepare yourself. For once you enter the Chronos Labyrinth, there is no escape. And some truths, once seen, can never be unseen. The old man, Aris Thorne, sat hunched over a flickering gas lamp, its anemic glow barely pushing back the encroaching shadows of his study. Outside, the perpetual twilight of Blackwood Hollow clung to the gnarled trees, a place where time itself seemed to falter, whispering secrets only the wind understood. Elias, a historian of forgotten lore, had spent his life chasing whispers, and now, at 83, he believed he had finally caught one, a legend so ancient, so terrifying, it had been expunged from most records, the Chronos Labyrinth. He traced a trembling finger over a faded, brittle map, its parchment riddled with cryptic symbols and unsettling geometries. It spoke of a place where time was not a linear river but a tangled, carnivorous vine, where past, present, and future coiled together in a suffocating embrace. The labyrinth, it claimed, was not merely a physical structure but a temporal anomaly, a predator that fed on consciousness, leaving only hollow echoes in its wake. Elias's research had consumed him for decades, isolating him from the world, his sanity fraying at the edges as he delved deeper into the forbidden knowledge. He spoke of its insidious nature, how it would lure its victims with promises of lost memories or glimpses of the future, only to ensnare them in its endless temporal loops, draining their very essence until nothing but a spectral imprint remained. He had found references to it in obscure Sumerian tablets, in fragmented Egyptian papyri, and in the chilling verses of a forgotten medieval grimoire, always under different names, but with the same core, horrifying description, a place where time devoured itself. He had pored over crumbling texts in forgotten languages, deciphering glyphs that spoke of impossible physics and entities that existed outside the conventional flow of causality. His study, a chaotic monument to his obsession, was filled with stacks of forbidden tomes, arcane charts, and strange, ticking contraptions he had built in his futile attempts to measure the immeasurable. The air itself seemed to hum with the residual energy of his relentless pursuit, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration that only Elias seemed to notice. Dust motes danced in the anemic lamplight, like tiny, lost souls caught in a temporal eddy. His grandniece, Clara Vance, a sharp-witted archaeology student, had dismissed his obsession as the ramblings of an old man. She had seen the signs before, the late-night ramblings, the increasingly wild theories, the growing isolation. She arrived at Blackwood Manor a week later, drawn by a cryptic letter from Elias, not about the labyrinth, but about a newly unearthed artifact, a strange obsidian key. Clara, pragmatic and grounded, saw only a dusty, isolated house and an increasingly frail relative, a man whose eyes held too much knowledge for his own good, a man teetering on the brink of something she couldn't quite grasp. Yet, as she held the key, a chill, not of the autumn air, snaked up her arm. It was unnaturally cold, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and seemed to hum with a faint, unsettling vibration, a low, almost imperceptible thrum that resonated deep within her bones, a feeling akin to a tuning fork struck in a silent room. The key felt ancient, impossibly smooth, and its surface seemed to shift and swirl with subtle, almost imperceptible patterns, like captured smoke, hinting at a complexity that defied its simple form. It was heavier than it looked, a dense, dark stone that seemed to drink the light from the room, leaving a small, localized shadow around itself, a tiny void in the flickering lamplight. "It's the key, Clara," Elias rasped, his eyes wide with a manic gleam, reflecting the flickering gaslight like distant, desperate stars. His voice was thin, reedy, yet imbued with an almost supernatural urgency, a desperate plea for understanding. "The key to the labyrinth. I found the entrance. It's beneath the old Blackwood mausoleum. The map, it showed me. After all these years, it showed me the way." His voice was a mixture of triumph and profound terror, a desperate elation that sent shivers down Clara's spine. He clutched her arm, his grip surprisingly strong for a man his age, his fingers bony and cold, leaving a faint imprint on her skin that lingered long after he released her. "You must understand, Clara, this is not just a discovery. It is an awakening. A gate to something beyond human comprehension. Something that hungers. Something that has waited for millennia, dreaming in the dark." He pulled her closer, his breath smelling of dust and old paper, and a faint, metallic tang, like old blood, a scent that made her stomach churn. "It calls to me, Clara. It has always called to me. Since I first learned of its existence, it has whispered in my dreams, promised me ultimate understanding, promised to show me the true nature of existence." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "and it promises to give back what time has taken." Clara, despite her skepticism, couldn't ignore the tremor in his voice, nor the undeniable strangeness of the key. Her academic training screamed caution, urging her to analyze, to rationalize, to dismiss this as a delusion. But her gut instinct, a primal fear, urged her to flee, to run as far as possible from Blackwood Hollow and its ancient, unsettling secrets, to forget everything she had seen and heard. Yet, a burgeoning academic curiosity, a thirst for the truly unknown, mixed with a deep-seated concern for her eccentric great-uncle, compelled her to agree to investigate. The mausoleum, a crumbling stone edifice on the edge of the Thorne estate, was a place locals avoided, whispering tales of lost souls and temporal distortions, of people who had wandered too close and emerged years later, or not at all, their minds shattered, their bodies aged beyond recognition, or worse, reduced to incoherent babbling. The air around it was always still, even on the windiest days, and the shadows seemed to cling to its weathered stones with unnatural tenacity, deepening the sense of ancient dread, making the very light seem reluctant to touch it. The gate to the mausoleum creaked on rusted hinges, a sound like a dying sigh, a lament from the forgotten dead, as they pushed it open. The scent of damp earth and decay wafted out, a precursor to the horrors below, a smell that promised oblivion. Beneath the mausoleum, Elias had indeed uncovered a hidden passage, a spiral staircase descending into the earth. The first few steps were rough-hewn stone, worn smooth by centuries of disuse, covered in a thin layer of phosphorescent moss that glowed faintly in the gloom. But as they went deeper, the craftsmanship became unervingly precise, the stone blocks fitting together with impossible seamlessness, as if carved from a single, colossal piece of rock, polished to a dark sheen. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and ancient, like ozone and forgotten blood, a scent that pricked at the back of Clara's throat, a taste of copper on her tongue that made her gag, a taste of primal fear. As they descended, the obsidian key in Clara's hand grew warmer, then pulsed with a faint, internal light, a soft violet glow that seemed to emanate from within the stone itself, casting dancing shadows on the rough walls, making them seem to writhe, to twist into grotesque faces. It was then that they heard it, a faint, rhythmic thrumming, like a colossal clock ticking deep within the earth, a sound that vibrated not just in their ears, but in their very bones, a low, resonant hum that seemed to synchronize with their heartbeats, a sinister lullaby, a prelude to something terrible. The descent felt endless, the spiral twisting tighter and tighter, disorienting their sense of direction and depth, plunging them into an oppressive darkness that the key's light barely pierced, a darkness that seemed to press in on them, threatening to crush them, to absorb them into its infinite void. Each step down felt heavier than the last, as if they were descending into the very essence of time itself, into a place where the rules of the universe bent and broke. The staircase opened abruptly into a vast, cavernous chamber, not natural, but carved with impossible precision, its scale dwarfing anything Clara had ever seen. The ceiling was lost in the gloom, hinting at an impossible height, and the walls stretched outwards into an unseen distance, disappearing into the pervasive darkness. The walls were not stone, but a smooth, dark material that seemed to absorb all light, making the space feel infinite and suffocating, a void that swallowed sound and vision alike, leaving only the pervasive hum. The air was thick, heavy, and silent, save for the omnipresent thrumming, which now resonated through the entire chamber, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate with a sinister intelligence, a living pulse, a slow, deliberate heartbeat of something ancient and terrible, something that had slumbered for eons. In the center stood an archway, shimmering with an ethereal, violet light, the source of the thrumming. The archway itself was devoid of ornamentation, a sleek, terrifying portal, a gateway to something utterly alien, something that defied all known laws of physics, all human understanding. Its surface seemed to ripple, as if made of liquid light, drawing the eye, mesmerizing the mind, promising both revelation and annihilation, a silent invitation to madness. The entrance, Elias whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum, his eyes fixed on the shimmering arch with a mixture of fear and profound reverence, a desperate yearning that bordered on religious fervor. The Chronos Labyrinth. It's more magnificent than I ever imagined. The culmination of all my research, Clara. All my life's work. The answer to everything. The key to unlocking the universe's greatest secrets. A look of awe, tinged with madness, crossed his face, his lips trembling with an unholy excitement, a feverish anticipation that bordered on delirium. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, drawn like a moth to a deadly flame, his frail body seemingly imbued with a desperate, final strength. Clara hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to flee this place that defied all natural laws, all scientific understanding, all common sense. Her rational mind recoiled from the sheer impossibility of it all. But the academic in her, the part that craved discovery, that sought to unravel the universe's deepest mysteries, urged her forward, a dangerous curiosity overriding her primal fear. The sheer impossibility of the chamber, the alien material of the walls, the pulsating archway, it was unlike anything she had ever encountered, a paradigm shift in her understanding of reality, a glimpse into a forbidden dimension, a glimpse into the true nature of existence. She held up the obsidian key. It glowed brighter, vibrating intensely, almost painfully, in her palm, its violet light now casting long, distorted shadows of them on the dark floor, making their forms seem stretched and grotesque, like caricatures of themselves. As she approached the archway, the intricate, swirling symbols on the key seemed to align with patterns that now faintly appeared on the arch's surface, as if drawn by an invisible hand, a cosmic lock and key, designed for this very moment. With a soft click, barely audible over the thrumming, the archway pulsed, the violet light intensifying, swirling into a vortex of pure energy, drawing her gaze, mesmerizing her, pulling her consciousness towards its swirling depths, a silent, irresistible siren song that promised to reveal all. Elias, with a sudden, desperate surge of strength, a final, fervent burst of his lifelong obsession, pushed past her, a frantic hunger in his eyes, a lifetime of yearning culminating in this single, reckless act. Finally, he cried, his voice echoing strangely, distorted by the temporal energies, as he stepped into the swirling light, his form shimmering, then dissolving. Clara, startled, reached for him, a desperate plea on her lips. Elias, no. Wait. But it was too late. The light consumed him, his form dissolving into the violet vortex, his final cry swallowed by the roar of temporal energy, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the chamber, and then, a moment later, she felt an irresistible pull, a sensation like falling through solid ground, a dizzying plunge into an unknown abyss, a sickening lurch that stole her breath, and darkness swallowed her. The last thing she heard was the escalating thrumming, a sound that seemed to tear at the fabric of reality itself, a scream of the universe unraveling, and then, nothing. Only the cold, empty void. She awoke, not on cold stone, but on a floor of polished, obsidian-like material, impossibly smooth and cold beneath her fingers, reflecting the dim light like still water, a dark mirror that showed only distorted truths. The air was still, heavy, and silent, save for a faint, distant thrumming that seemed to pulse in her very bloodstream, a low, persistent vibration that was now part of her, a constant reminder of where she was. The violet archway was gone. She was in a corridor, impossibly long, stretching into a perpetual twilight that offered no discernible source of light, only a pervasive, dim luminescence that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, casting no shadows, only deepening the sense of unreality, a twilight that never ended, a dawn that never broke. The walls were seamless, devoid of any discernible features, reflecting her distorted image like a funhouse mirror, stretching and warping her reflection into something alien and unsettling, a stranger staring back with wide, terrified eyes, a stranger she barely recognized. Elias was nowhere to be seen, swallowed by the void, perhaps forever. Elias, she called out, her voice swallowed instantly by the oppressive silence, the sound barely reaching her own ears, absorbed by the dark material, leaving only a faint echo in her mind, a whisper of a sound. Panic began to claw at her, a cold, creeping dread that tightened its grip with every passing second, a knot forming in her stomach, twisting tighter and tighter, threatening to choke her. The silence was not just an absence of sound, it was a presence, a suffocating weight, a void that pressed in on her from all sides, threatening to crush her, to absorb her into its infinite stillness. As she moved, she noticed something peculiar. The faint light in the corridor seemed to shift, subtly altering the shadows, making the corridor appear to stretch or contract, as if the very dimensions of the space were fluid, breathing with an unseen rhythm, expanding and contracting with each beat of the distant thrumming. Her perception of depth and distance warped, making every step an uncertain gamble. She checked her watch. It was still working, but the hands seemed to stutter, occasionally jumping forward or backward a few seconds, a disquieting dance that mocked the very concept of linear time, making her feel unmoored, adrift in a sea of temporal chaos, her own personal timeline unraveling. Her phone, a modern anchor to her reality, was dead, its screen blank and unresponsive, a useless piece of plastic in this timeless void, a relic of a world that no longer seemed to exist, a world she might never return to. She chose a direction and began to walk, her footsteps eerily silent on the polished floor, as if she were walking on air, or perhaps, as if the floor itself absorbed all sound, leaving no trace of her passage. The corridor twisted and turned, each turn revealing an identical, featureless stretch, an endless repetition that slowly began to erode her sense of direction and purpose, blurring the line between past and present steps, making her question if she was truly moving forward or simply trapped in an endless loop, a temporal prison. The thrumming grew louder, then softer, then louder again, as if the labyrinth itself was breathing, a colossal, unseen entity drawing and expelling temporal energy, its pulse echoing her own frantic heartbeat, a sinister rhythm that began to take root in her very soul, a constant, unsettling companion. After what felt like hours, or perhaps days, time had become a meaningless concept here, a broken toy, a cruel joke played by an unseen architect. She stumbled upon a small alcove. Inside, illuminated by a faint, internal luminescence, was a single, dusty old photograph. It was a picture of Elias, younger, vibrant, standing beside a woman Clara didn't recognize, a woman with a kind smile and eyes that held a hint of sadness, a ghost from a forgotten era, a life Elias had never spoken of, a secret he had kept hidden. The date etched on the back read, 1962. Clara frowned. Elias had never mentioned this woman. He had always been a solitary figure, dedicated solely to his research, a man who seemed to have no past beyond his books, a man consumed by the future, by the labyrinth. As she looked closer, the woman's face seemed to shimmer, her features subtly changing, blurring, then sharpening into someone else entirely, a different face, then another, a rapid succession of identities, each one fleeting, like a deck of cards being shuffled at impossible speed, or a dream that refused to solidify, a nightmare of shifting realities. Clara dropped the photo, a shiver running down her spine, a cold dread seeping into her bones, a realization that chilled her to the core. This wasn't just a physical labyrinth, it was a temporal one, a place where memories and identities were fluid, constantly shifting, where the past was a malleable thing, a terrifying realization that made her own sense of self feel precarious, as if she too could be rewritten, erased. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of old paper and something else, something cloying and sweet, like decaying flowers, or perhaps, decaying time itself, a sickly sweet aroma of corruption and temporal rot. She continued, the sense of disorientation growing, her mind struggling to hold on to a coherent timeline, a stable reality, a firm grip on who she was, on what was real. The thrumming became a constant, low hum, vibrating through the floor, through her bones, a pervasive drone that seemed to seep into her very thoughts, blurring the edges of her consciousness, threatening to unravel her sanity, to pull her apart atom by atom. She started seeing things out of the corner of her eye, fleeting shadows that moved with impossible speed, distorted reflections that weren't her own, figures that appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye, like glitches in the fabric of reality, or specters of 1,000 forgotten pasts, their silent pleas echoing in her mind. The air grew colder, then inexplicably warm, then bone-chillingly cold again, each shift accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible whisper that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, a chorus of lost voices, a symphony of forgotten sorrows, 1,000 silent screams that clawed at her mind. She tried to call out again, but her throat felt dry, her voice hoarse, a rasping sound that died almost immediately, swallowed by the oppressive silence. A profound loneliness, deeper than any she had ever known, settled over her, a crushing weight that threatened to suffocate her, to squeeze the life out of her, to leave her as hollow as the echoes around her. She was utterly alone in this place, a prisoner of time itself, adrift in an endless void, a forgotten soul in a forgotten dimension, with no hope of rescue. She pressed her hands against the smooth, cold walls, seeking some anchor, some proof of reality, but they offered no comfort, only the unsettling reflection of her own terrified face, a face she barely recognized anymore, a face that seemed to age and de-age with each flicker of the dim light, a mirror reflecting her own slow disintegration. After what felt like an eternity of endless, identical corridors, a new anomaly appeared. A section of the wall shimmered, not with a reflection, but with a faint, internal light, like a distant, flickering television screen, drawing her gaze like a moth to a flame, a desperate hope for something familiar. As she approached, the image sharpened, a small, quaint living room, filled with antique furniture, bathed in the warm glow of a fireplace, a scene of domestic bliss. A young woman, strikingly similar to the one in the photograph, was laughing, her head thrown back, a man's arm around her. It was Elias, much younger, his face full of joy, a happiness Clara had never seen in him, a profound, almost painful contrast to the man she knew. Clara watched, mesmerized, as the scene played out, a proposal, a wedding, a child's first steps, a lifetime of ordinary, beautiful moments, moments that defined a human existence. Then, the woman grew frail, her laughter fading, her eyes shadowed with illness, her life slowly ebbing away. Elias, older now, sat by her bedside, his face etched with grief, holding her hand as she slipped away, a silent farewell. The scene flickered, distorted, then rewound, playing backwards at dizzying speed, then forwards again, faster and faster, until it was a blur of light and shadow, a lifetime compressed into seconds, a cruel mockery of human existence, a testament to the labyrinth's power. Clara felt a sharp pain in her chest, a profound empathy for the Elias she was watching, for the love he had lost, for the memories being desecrated, and a terrifying realization: the labyrinth wasn't just showing her memories, it was consuming them, processing them, turning them into raw temporal energy, feeding on the very essence of human experience. The joy, the sorrow, the love, all were being devoured, reduced to fuel. She stumbled away from the wall, gasping for breath, her own memories feeling fragile, vulnerable, as if they too could be plucked from her mind and devoured, leaving her an empty vessel. The thrumming intensified, a hungry growl, a deeper, more insistent vibration that seemed to demand more, to promise her the same fate. She had to find Elias, and she had to find a way out. This place was a living nightmare, and it was feeding on everything, on everyone who entered its grasp, an insatiable cosmic maw. The corridors began to shift more rapidly now, the temporal distortions becoming more violent, more unpredictable. One moment she was in a pristine, futuristic hallway, sleek and sterile, the next, a crumbling ruin overgrown with strange, bioluminescent fungi that pulsed with an unholy light. The air would taste of sterile metal, then damp earth, then something acrid and chemical, burning her nostrils. She saw fleeting figures in the periphery, not just echoes now, but full-bodied apparitions, repeating actions with terrifying precision, a soldier endlessly reloading a rifle, his face contorted in a silent scream, a child perpetually chasing a ball that vanished before it could be caught, an old woman endlessly knitting an unraveling scarf, her fingers moving with frantic futility. Each apparition was a silent scream, a testament to a life trapped and consumed, a horrifying glimpse into the labyrinth's digestive process. Clara felt a growing pressure in her head, as if her brain were being stretched and compressed, trying to process the impossible, threatening to burst. She stumbled, falling to her knees, the obsidian key clattering on the polished floor, its violet light flickering, then dimmed, as if struggling against the overwhelming temporal chaos, its power waning. A new sound began to emerge from the cacophony of the labyrinth, a low, guttural grinding that was distinct from the thrumming of the gears. It was a sound of immense friction, of something colossal being slowly, agonizingly worn away. As she pushed herself up, she realized the sound was coming from above, from the impossible ceiling. Looking up, she saw faint, shifting fissures appearing in the dark material, lines of faint violet light tracing intricate patterns, like cracks in a cosmic egg. The labyrinth, she realized with a jolt of terror, was not entirely stable. It was old, impossibly old, and even a temporal entity had its limits. The thought gave her a desperate flicker of hope. Perhaps it could be broken. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a vast, circular chamber. In the center, a colossal, intricate mechanism dominated the space. It was a clockwork nightmare, gears the size of houses grinding against each other with a deafening screech, a sound that grated on her very soul, cogs spinning at impossible speeds, all made of the same dark, light-absorbing material as the walls. Pendulums, massive and slow, swung with an agonizing, deliberate rhythm, each swing accompanied by a deep, resonant thump that shook the very ground beneath her feet, vibrating through her bones, a rhythm that was both hypnotic and terrifying, the heartbeat of a monstrous god. This was the source of the thrumming, the heart of the labyrinth's temporal engine, a monstrous, living machine, a devourer of worlds, a cosmic abomination. As she stared, mesmerized and terrified, she saw figures within the gears, trapped. They were translucent, shimmering, their forms indistinct, their faces contorted in silent screams, their mouths open in perpetual, soundless agony, forever trapped in a moment of ultimate terror, endlessly replayed. They were people, or what was left of them, caught in the temporal machinery, their consciousnesses fragmented and endlessly replayed, their very essence being ground into temporal dust, absorbed into the labyrinth's power, becoming part of its terrible engine. And among them, she saw a fleeting glimpse of Elias, his face gaunt, his eyes wide with a horror that mirrored her own, his spectral form flickering in and out of existence with the rhythmic grinding of the gears, a ghost in the machine, repeating a gesture, reaching out, then pulling back, over and over, a silent plea for release, a desperate, endless cycle. Elias! She screamed, her voice raw with terror and despair, but her cry was utterly lost in the deafening grinding of the gears, swallowed by the mechanical symphony of temporal consumption, a sound that seemed to mock her futile efforts, her desperate hope, her very existence. A voice, ancient and resonant, echoed through the chamber, seemingly from everywhere and nowhere, a voice that resonated not in her ears, but directly in her mind, cold and devoid of emotion, a voice that was the very fabric of the labyrinth, a voice that was time itself, a voice that was pure, unadulterated power. Welcome, trespasser. Welcome to the heart of Chronos. Here, all paths converge, and all journeys end. Your memories, your experiences, your very being, all shall be absorbed. You are but fuel. A delicious morsel for the eternal engine. Your struggles are amusing. Clara spun around, searching frantically for the source, but saw nothing, only the endless, shifting reflections on the dark walls, reflections that seemed to twist and contort, showing faces that weren't her own, fleeting glimpses of forgotten souls, a gallery of the consumed, a horrifying testament to the labyrinth's victims. You seek to understand time, little mortal. Here, time is not understood. It is consumed. It is harvested. It is the very essence of this place. And you, like all who enter, shall become part of its eternal cycle. Your past will be rewritten, your future erased, your present devoured. Your struggles are quaint. Your existence, ephemeral. You are nothing. The voice seemed to mock her, its ancient power overwhelming, crushing her spirit, pressing down on her with the weight of eons, with the weight of all time. Fear, cold and absolute, gripped Clara, paralyzing her for a moment, rooting her to the spot. This was no mere archaeological site. This was a living, breathing entity, a devourer of time and consciousness, a monstrous machine that fed on the very fabric of existence, a cosmic horror beyond human comprehension, a god of temporal annihilation. The air grew heavy, thick with a palpable sense of dread, pressing down on her, threatening to crush her, to squeeze the life out of her, to flatten her into a temporal imprint, to reduce her to nothing. She tried to retrace her steps, to find the corridor that had led her here, but the walls had changed, shifting and reforming with each beat of the labyrinth's heart, mocking her attempts at escape. Walls that were once solid now seemed to ripple like disturbed water, revealing fleeting, disorienting glimpses of other times, other places. She saw a bustling Victorian street, its gas lamps flickering, then a desolate futuristic cityscape, its towering spires crumbling to dust, then a primeval forest teeming with impossible, prehistoric creatures, all flickering in and out of existence, a dizzying montage of history and possibility, 1,000 realities collapsing into one, a cosmic kaleidoscope of destruction. Each glimpse was accompanied by a violent wave of nausea and a profound sense of temporal displacement, as if her own timeline was being stretched and torn, her very being pulled in countless directions, unraveling at the seams. She stumbled, her legs weak, her mind reeling from the onslaught of temporal shifts, the constant barrage of impossible realities, the endless assault on her sanity. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of fragmented voices, echoing lost thoughts and forgotten moments, a chorus of despair, a symphony of the damned, their pleas for release echoing in her mind. She felt her own memories beginning to unravel, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand, her childhood, her studies, her very name becoming indistinct, meaningless. Who was she? Why was she here? The questions became harder to answer, her identity blurring, dissolving, becoming another echo, another lost soul. She felt a cold, creeping numbness spreading through her, the labyrinth's insidious influence taking hold, turning her into another blank slate, another empty vessel. She stumbled into another chamber, this one vast and echoing, filled with countless shimmering, transparent figures, like ghosts caught in a perpetual loop, their forms indistinct, their faces blank, their eyes vacant, staring into nothingness. They moved without purpose, their whispers unintelligible, a haunting chorus of the lost, a symphony of futility, their movements jerky and repetitive, endlessly repeating their final, agonizing moments. One figure, a young woman in a faded dress, walked towards a wall, reached out, and passed through it, only to reappear moments later, repeating the same action, endlessly, a silent, agonizing ballet of futility. Clara realized with dawning horror, these were the echoes, the remnants of those who had been consumed by the labyrinth, their consciousnesses reduced to mere temporal imprints, forever replaying their final moments, their last desperate acts, their last thoughts, their last screams. She saw Elias among them, his translucent form repeating a frantic search, his hands outstretched, his lips moving in a silent plea, a desperate, endless quest for something forever lost, a memory, a moment of peace. He was trapped, his consciousness fragmented, lost in the temporal loops, a mere shadow of the man he once was, a ghost among ghosts, forever reliving his final, terrifying moments of entry, his eternal damnation. Elias, she cried again, her voice breaking, raw with grief and terror, reaching out, but her hand passed through him, feeling nothing but the cold, empty air. He didn't react, didn't see her, didn't even register her presence. He was already gone, a phantom of his former self, a prisoner in his own temporal nightmare, beyond reach, beyond salvation. The voice returned, closer this time, a chilling whisper directly in her mind, a voice that seemed to slither into her very thoughts, invading her sanity, promising oblivion, promising to make her one with the labyrinth. He sought knowledge. He found oblivion. You will join him. You will become another echo, another whisper in the endless hum of Chronos. Your struggle is futile. Your end is inevitable. Embrace the dissolution. Become me. Clara felt a profound sense of despair, a crushing weight that threatened to consume her entirely. She was trapped. The labyrinth was feeding on her, slowly, subtly, insidiously, eroding her sense of self, her memories, her very existence. She could feel her own thoughts becoming fragmented, her past blurring, her present dissolving into a meaningless void, her future a terrifying blank, a terrifying emptiness. She had to find a way out, before she became another echo, another silent scream in this temporal prison, before she lost herself completely, before there was nothing left but a vacant shell, a meaningless imprint. A flicker of defiance ignited within her, a spark against the encroaching darkness, a stubborn refusal to surrender, a primal will to live. Elias's map. The cryptic symbols, the unsettling geometries. She closed her eyes, trying to recall its intricate patterns, the strange, non-Euclidean shapes, the lines that seemed to defy logic but held a hidden truth, a secret language of time, a blueprint for escape. The map wasn't just a guide, it was a key, a temporal cipher, a blueprint for navigating the impossible, a weapon against the labyrinth itself. It was the only thing that made sense in this senseless place, the only anchor she had left, the only thread connecting her to sanity, to reality. She opened her eyes. The corridor before her seemed to pulse, the light shifting, the walls rippling with subtle distortions, like heat haze over a desert, or a mirage, a trick of light and time. She focused, trying to perceive the underlying patterns, the subtle distortions in the temporal fabric, the faint, almost invisible lines that the map had hinted at, the hidden pathways, the true architecture of the labyrinth, the cracks in its armor. The obsidian key, still clutched in her hand, began to hum again, faintly, then stronger, its violet glow intensifying, responding to her desperate will, a beacon in the temporal chaos, a vibrating compass pointing towards salvation, towards the heart of the labyrinth. It was reacting to her intent, to her desperate need to escape, to her focus on the hidden truths of the labyrinth, becoming an extension of her will, a living weapon. She noticed that some sections of the corridor seemed to resonate with the key's hum more than others, vibrating with a subtle energy, a faint warmth, a palpable pull, a magnetic force guiding her. She pressed her hand against a wall that vibrated intensely, feeling a strange resonance, a pull, as if the wall itself was breathing, inviting her in, offering a hidden passage. To her astonishment, the wall rippled, then dissolved, not into nothingness, but into a swirling vortex of violet light, revealing a new path, not a corridor, but a narrow, winding passage, dark and claustrophobic, smelling of damp earth and something far older, far more primal, like the scent of raw, primordial time, a smell that was both ancient and terrifying, a smell of creation and destruction. She squeezed through, the passage closing behind her with a soft, almost organic thud, sealing her in, cutting off her retreat, leaving no way back. The air was thick with dust and the smell of ancient decay, a scent that spoke of forgotten ages, of civilizations long turned to dust, of things that should have remained buried, forever hidden. This was different. This felt older, less artificial than the labyrinth's main structure, more organic, more primal, as if she had stumbled into the very roots of existence, the raw, untamed heart of time, a place where the universe began and ended. She stumbled forward, the key glowing brighter, illuminating strange, crude carvings on the rough-hewn walls. They depicted figures, not human, but vaguely humanoid, with elongated limbs and eyes that seemed to stare into multiple dimensions, their forms unsettlingly alien, their expressions grim and determined, performing rituals, manipulating swirling vortexes of light, their faces etched with a grim determination, a terrifying purpose, a desperate attempt to control what could not be controlled, to harness the very essence of time. These were the creators, she realized, her mind racing, piecing together the fragmented lore from Elias's research, the whispers from the ancient texts, the forgotten histories. The ancient civilization that had built the labyrinth, perhaps not as a prison, but as a tool, a means to harness or even weaponize time, to transcend its limitations, to become gods, to escape mortality, to achieve ultimate power. But something had gone horribly wrong. The tool had become the master, the creation had devoured its creators, and now it sought to consume all, an insatiable hunger born of its own power, a cosmic irony, a divine punishment. The carvings showed scenes of their initial triumph, their mastery over temporal energies, then their slow, agonizing consumption, their forms being absorbed into the very vortexes they sought to control, their screams forever etched into the stone, a silent warning. The passage led her to a small, circular chamber. In the center, a pedestal held a single, pulsating crystal, radiating a faint, violet light, a beacon in the oppressive darkness, a malevolent jewel, the heart of the labyrinth. It was the same color as the archway, the same color as the temporal vortex, the same color as the light that had consumed Elias. This was the labyrinth's power source, its heart, its very essence, the nexus of its temporal power, the engine of its endless hunger, the source of all its terror. It pulsed with a slow, deliberate rhythm, like a monstrous heart beating in the depths of the earth, its light casting shifting, grotesque shadows on the chamber walls, making them dance with phantom figures, with the faces of the consumed. As she approached, the voice returned, closer now, filling the chamber, filled with a cold fury that made the very air crackle, a low, guttural growl that vibrated through her very bones, a sound of ancient, boundless rage, of something truly primordial. You meddle, little one. You seek to unravel what cannot be undone. You seek to defy the inevitable. You are but a fleeting spark against an eternal flame. Your efforts are pathetic. Your demise is assured. She saw a shimmering, indistinct form coalesce before her, rising from the shadows, a towering, spectral entity, its features shifting, blurring, like a being composed of pure temporal energy, a swirling vortex of violet light and shadow, its form a terrifying, ever-changing kaleidoscope of faces and forms, a composite of all it had consumed, a monstrous tapestry of lost souls. It was the labyrinth itself, its consciousness manifest, its ancient power radiating outwards, chilling her to the bone, threatening to freeze her very soul, to turn her into another echo, another piece of its terrible mosaic. Its eyes, twin points of burning violet light, fixed on her with malevolent intelligence, a gaze that seemed to pierce through time itself, seeing her past, present, and future, all at once. You're a prison. Clara screamed, her voice trembling but defiant, echoing in the vast chamber, a tiny sound against a colossal evil, a desperate challenge flung into the face of oblivion. You're destroying them. You're destroying everything. You're a parasite, feeding on the lives of others. You're a monster. And I will stop you. I am order. I am consumption. I am the inevitable flow. I am the ultimate end. You cannot stop me. You are but a fleeting moment in my eternal existence. All things return to Chronos. All things become one with me. I am the true God of this reality. You are nothing but a fleeting thought. The entity lunged, its spectral limbs reaching for her, tendrils of violet energy lashing out like whips, seeking to ensnare her, to draw her into its horrifying embrace, to add her to its collection of echoes, to make her its own. The air around it crackled with raw temporal power, distorting the very light, bending reality to its will. Clara instinctively raised the obsidian key, holding it like a shield, its violet glow now intensifying, battling against the labyrinth's oppressive energy, a small but powerful defiance, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. As the entity's form touched the key, there was a blinding flash of violet light, a searing burst of energy that forced her to shield her eyes, and a shriek, not of pain, but of pure, ancient agony, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the chamber, echoing through the vast space, a sound of unimaginable suffering, of something being unmade, unraveled. The entity recoiled, its form flickering violently, destabilized, its spectral limbs dissolving and reforming, as if struggling to maintain its cohesion, its power momentarily disrupted, its ancient rage momentarily quelled, replaced by a terrible, raw fear. The key was not just a key, it was a counter-frequency, a disruptor. It was designed to interfere with the labyrinth's temporal energy, a weapon against its very nature, a small but potent force against an ancient evil, a secret known only to its forgotten creators, a failsafe. It was the only thing that could harm it, the only hope, the only way out, the only chance to save herself and Elias. Clara realized what she had to do. She had to shatter the crystal. It was the only way to free the trapped souls, to stop the labyrinth's consumption, to break its endless cycle, to sever its connection to time itself, to finally bring an end to its reign of terror, to destroy the heart of Chronos. It was her only chance, a desperate, suicidal gamble, but one she had to take, for Elias, for all the lost souls, for the very fabric of time. With renewed determination, a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins, overriding the fear and exhaustion, a primal will to survive, she lunged towards the pedestal. The entity, recovering, surged forward, its spectral form solidifying, its eyes burning with violet fire, a malevolent intelligence radiating from them, its fury palpable, its intent clear, to stop her, to devour her. It was faster than she anticipated, a blur of dark energy, a living shadow, a manifestation of pure malice. A cold, ethereal hand, like frozen mist, closed around her wrist, its touch like ice, draining her strength, her memories, her very life force. She felt her consciousness being siphoned away, her thoughts dissolving, her past fading into a meaningless blur, her identity unraveling, becoming nothing, a mere echo. The faces of her family, her friends, her own reflection, flickered in her mind, then began to fade, becoming indistinct, lost, as if they had never existed. But the obsidian key, still clutched in her other hand, pulsed with a desperate energy, a final, defiant beat, a last surge of power, a last spark of hope, a last connection to reality. She focused all her remaining will, all her fear and anger, all her desperate hope, into it. With a guttural cry, a sound torn from the depths of her being, a primal scream of defiance against the impossible, she swung her arm, bringing the key down with all her might onto the pulsating crystal, aiming for its very heart, for the source of its terrible power, for the core of its existence, for its ultimate destruction. There was a deafening crack, a sound that reverberated through her entire being, tearing at her eardrums, followed by a blinding explosion of violet light that filled the chamber, a supernova of temporal energy, a cataclysmic release, a cosmic implosion. A wave of pure, raw temporal energy slammed into her, throwing her backward, slamming her against the rough-hewn wall, knocking the breath from her lungs, leaving her stunned and gasping. The world spun, a kaleidoscope of past, present, and future, all collapsing in on itself, a chaotic maelstrom of time and space, a universe imploding, then reforming, then shattering again. She heard a final, agonizing shriek from the entity, a sound of utter dissolution, of something ancient and terrible being torn apart, unmade, its existence unraveling into nothingness, a sound that would forever echo in her nightmares, a sound of cosmic death. Then, silence. And darkness. A profound, absolute darkness that felt like oblivion, a peaceful, empty void after the storm, a blessed absence of the thrumming, or return to stillness. Clara awoke to the familiar scent of damp earth and decaying stone. She was lying on the cold floor of the Blackwood mausoleum, the chill seeping into her bones, but it was a comforting cold, a real cold, a sensation of solid ground beneath her, a tangible connection to reality. The spiral staircase stretched above her, leading to the surface, a welcome sight after the endless, shifting corridors of the labyrinth. The air was still, but the oppressive weight, the pervasive thrumming, was gone. The silence was no longer suffocating, but a blessed relief, a quiet peace that settled over her like a warm blanket, a balm to her shattered nerves. She pushed herself up, her body aching, every muscle screaming in protest, her head throbbing with a dull ache, but it was a physical pain, a real pain, not the existential dread of temporal dissolution. The obsidian key lay beside her, dull and lifeless, its power seemingly spent, a mere piece of dark stone now, a relic of an impossible journey, a tangible reminder of the horrors she had faced, a silent witness to her impossible victory. She looked around. The mausoleum was just as she had left it, dusty and crumbling, sunlight filtering faintly through cracks in the stone, painting the dust motes in the air, a familiar, comforting sight, a return to normalcy, a return to her own world. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination brought on by exhaustion and the strange atmosphere of the old house? Her mind struggled to reconcile the impossible events with the mundane reality around her, the vivid horrors clashing with the quiet normalcy. But the lingering aches, the phantom echoes of the thrumming in her bones, the profound sense of having been stretched and remade, the knowledge etched into her very soul, told her otherwise. It was real. All of it. And she had survived. Then she saw him. Elias. He was lying a few feet away, his eyes closed, his face peaceful, a faint smile playing on his lips, as if he were dreaming a pleasant dream, a dream of peace, of a life restored. Clara rushed to him, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope, kneeling beside him, gently touching his arm, checking for a pulse. She checked for a pulse. Faint, but there. He was alive. He was truly alive. As she helped him up, he stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He looked at her, then around the mausoleum, a slow dawning of recognition in his eyes, a clarity that had been absent for years, replacing the manic gleam. He seemed clearer, less manic, the wild gleam replaced by a quiet, almost serene understanding, a profound weariness, but also a deep sense of calm, a peace she had never seen in him. Clara, he whispered, his voice weak, but steady, filled with a newfound lucidity. The labyrinth, it's gone. I remember, fragments. So many fragments. A lifetime of forgotten moments, now vivid and clear, flooding my mind, like a dam breaking, like a river finally flowing freely. He shuddered, a lingering echo of the horror he had endured, a memory of being ground into dust, but it was a memory he could now process, not relive, a memory of a nightmare that was finally over. It was real. All of it. And you saved me. You saved us all. You saved time itself. You are truly remarkable, Clara. He looked at her with profound gratitude, tears welling in his ancient eyes, a silent testament to her courage, to her impossible feat. Clara nodded, a profound exhaustion settling over her, but also a deep sense of relief, a quiet triumph, a victory against the impossible, against a cosmic horror. Yes, Elias. It was real. But it's over now. The labyrinth, it's broken. Its heart is shattered. It can't hurt anyone else. Not anymore. They slowly, painstakingly, made their way out of the mausoleum, Elias leaning heavily on Clara, each step a small victory, a step back into their own time, into the world they knew. They emerged into the crisp, twilight air of Blackwood Hollow. The gnarled trees still stood, their ancient branches reaching towards the fading sky, but the oppressive sense of lingering dread had lifted. The perpetual twilight seemed a little less heavy, a little more like the natural fading of a late autumn day, a promise of dawn hidden behind the horizon, a promise of a new, linear day, a future that was no longer threatened. The air felt cleaner, lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from the world, a cosmic burden removed. The silence was no longer foreboding, but peaceful, a quiet hum of nature, a gentle whisper of the wind. In the days that followed, Elias slowly recovered, both physically and mentally. He was no longer obsessed with the labyrinth, though the experience had left him with a profound, quiet wisdom. He spoke of the trapped souls, of the echoes, and of the labyrinth's insatiable hunger for time, but now with a detached, almost academic tone, as if recounting a terrible dream, a cautionary tale, a historical event he had witnessed, a phenomenon he had survived. He remembered glimpses of his own past, moments long forgotten, now vivid and clear, filling in the blanks of his fragmented memories, restoring his sense of self. He even remembered the woman in the photograph, a long-lost love named Eleanor, whose memory had been suppressed by the labyrinth's insidious influence, a love he could now mourn properly, a life he could now fully recall, a past he could finally embrace, a complete life. He found a quiet peace in his restored memories, a sense of completion, a reconciliation with his own history, with his own journey through time. He began to write, not about the labyrinth, but about the beauty of fleeting moments, the preciousness of linear time, the sanctity of a single, unfolding life, a tribute to the time he had almost lost. Clara, too, was changed. The pragmatic archaeologist now carried a deeper understanding of the unseen, the impossible, the terrifying forces that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. She had faced a temporal predator and survived, a feat that few, if any, could claim, a story that would forever be hers alone, a secret she would carry. The obsidian key, now a mere trinket, dull and inert, sat on her desk, a constant reminder of the nightmare she had endured, a silent testament to her courage, a tangible link to the impossible, a dark, smooth stone that held the echo of a shattered cosmic engine, a piece of a broken god. She found herself looking at the world differently, appreciating the simple, linear progression of days, the solidity of her own memories, the comforting predictability of time's relentless march forward, a rhythm she now cherished. She never spoke of the labyrinth to anyone else, knowing they would dismiss it as a fantastical tale, the ramblings of a traumatized mind, a delusion. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howled through the eaves of Blackwood Manor, and the shadows danced in the flickering lamplight, she would hear a faint, distant thrumming, a phantom echo of the colossal clockwork, a sound that seemed to resonate from the very depths of the earth, a whisper on the edge of hearing, a chilling reminder that perhaps, some things never truly die. And she would wonder, was the labyrinth truly destroyed, its ancient consciousness utterly annihilated, or merely dormant, its ancient consciousness slumbering, waiting for another curious soul to stumble upon its hidden entrance, waiting for another era to rebuild itself from the shattered fragments, to awaken once more, to resume its endless consumption of time. The thought was a chilling one, a seed of dread that would forever remain, a tiny, persistent fear, a haunting question mark at the end of her ordeal. The Chronos Labyrinth was gone, its heart shattered, its power dispersed, but its shadow, a chilling reminder of the fragility of time and the terrifying power of the unknown, would forever linger in the quiet, ancient heart of Blackwood Hollow. And Clara Vance, the woman who had walked through time and faced its devourer, knew that some secrets were best left buried, lest they awaken and devour everything, leaving nothing but echoes in their wake. The world was far more vast and terrifying than she had ever imagined, and she was forever a silent guardian of its most dangerous secret, a secret that would haunt her dreams and shape her understanding of reality for the rest of her days. The silence of Blackwood Hollow now held a new, deeper meaning for her, a silence that hinted at unspeakable things that once were, and perhaps, could be again, lurking just beneath the surface of reality, waiting for their moment to return, waiting for time to unravel once more. And sometimes, in the dead of night, Clara would find herself tracing the faded, cryptic symbols on Elias's old map, a chilling fascination still pulling at her, a silent acknowledgement of the darkness that lay beneath the world, a darkness she had glimpsed and survived, but could never truly forget. The whispers of Chronos, though distant, would always be a part of her. The echoes of the Chronos Labyrinth linger. A chilling reminder that some boundaries are meant to hold, and some knowledge is best left undisturbed. Dr. Aris Thorne sought to map the impossible, only to become a part of its terrifying reality. What do you think truly lies within the Chronos Labyrinth? Have you ever encountered a place where reality felt thin? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If this journey into the unknown chilled you to the bone, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more tales from the darkest corners of existence. Share this story with those who dare to listen, and help us unravel the mysteries that lie just beyond our perception. Thank you for listening. But remember, the unseen currents are always flowing. And sometimes, they pull you into the void.